This is Kurtop with you, and these are 100 incredible coincidences that change the course of history. The Wolfsegg Iron Cube, Austria, 1885. A worker splits brown coal, and a tiny iron cube with smooth edges and grooves, as if lathe-made, rolls out of the black lump. The newspapers instantly dubbed the find a bolt from the Stone Age, since the coal was found in layers estimated to be over 20 million years old. The cube was placed in the Salzburg Museum, where it was found to be cast iron with high carbon and slag, not pure iron. The alloy is typical for blast furnaces of the 19th century. On the edge there's a tiny tail, the spot where molten metal flowed out of the casting mold. Under a microscope, the surface is covered with porous chamber rust, just like blast furnace slag. A piece of waste accidentally got into a coal cart and went down into the seam with it. And yet, looking at the almost perfect surfaces of the cube, visitors wonder if the geometry is just too precise for a random fragment. Maybe it's a part of an unknown mechanism that nature hid deep within the rock. The Tashwinat mummy. This is the oldest mummy in Africa. In Libya, during archaeological excavations at Wan Mahagiak, archaeologists discovered unique mummies. After conducting numerous studies, scientists stated that the mummies are 5,400 to 5,600 years old. Their uniqueness lies in the fact that they are older than any previously found in neighboring Egypt. The discovery was made by Professor Fabrizio Mori in 1958. The mummy of a 3-year-old child was found in the fetal position. The embalmed body was carefully wrapped in leaves and covered with antelope skin. Instead of internal organs, there were some herbs inside the body. Scientists continued to study the herb mixture to learn how the body was preserved for nearly 6,000 years. Following this mummy's discovery, archaeologists are certain the continent's first mummies did not originate in Egypt. Egyptians adopted mummification methods from others. A new giant pyramid. In Indonesia, the giant underground pyramid of Gunung Padang has been discovered, which is older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza. This place, shrouded in mystery and considered sacred by the local residents of the island of West Java, is known as Punden Berundak, a stepped pyramid. Archaeological work has only just begun, but it has already shown that Gunung Padang may be the oldest pyramidal structure in the world, built on top of an extinct volcano before the advent of agriculture. The latest research suggests that there may be chambers inside the hill, full of the unknown. The name Mountain of Enlightenment emphasizes that an ancient civilization may have turned the volcanic hill into the foundation for a pyramid many millennia ago. Radiocarbon dating shows that construction began around the last ice age, making it over 16,000 years old, and possibly even 27,000 years ago, which puts it in the same age range as Göbekli Tepe. Between 2011 and 2015, a group of specialists conducted a comprehensive analysis using drilling and seismic studies. They determined that Gunung Padang was built in several stages. By examining the interior of the hill, scientists discovered signs of hidden chambers, some of which reach 15 meters in length and 10 meters in height, confirming the uniqueness and mystery of this ancient structure. Fingerprints in the sarcophagus. In 2005, a restoration team worked on an Egyptian sarcophagus at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. The coffin belonged to a priest named Nespower Shefut, who died around 1000 before Christ. Under the lid, they unexpectedly found the craftsman's dirty fingerprints from 3,000 years ago. For some reason, the ancient workers handled the inside of the lid before the varnish had dried. As a result of such impatience, their fingerprints were preserved for posterity. They were made public only 11 years later, in 2016, when the unusual artifact was included in the first major exhibition dedicated to Egyptian artists and how their styles evolved over more than 4,000 years. Inside the Egyptian mummy of a hawk. American researchers studied the mummy of a bird that was believed to be the remains of a hawk. It turned out that under the cocoon were the remains of a sacred ibis, which even had some soft tissues and feathers partially preserved. Scientists say this find, stored in an educational institution for years, is about 1,500 to 2,000 years old. Interest in ancient Egyptian animal mummies has grown recently. Now, X-ray computed tomography enables 3D reconstructions of their interiors without harming them. This method is also used to study human mummies. Recently, Egyptologists examined Amenhotep I's mummy and found it heavily damaged by tomb robbers. They also scanned 2 ancient mummies from the Valley of the Kings. Graduate student Carol Ann Barsotti from Cornell University studied a supposed bird mummy that had been kept in her institution's collection labeled as hawk mummy. The exact origin of this artifact remains unknown, as there are no records of its arrival at the university. As a result of the study, they discovered that inside the cocoon, there really are the remains of a bird, with even some soft tissues and feathers preserved. It turned out that one of the bird's legs was broken even before it was mummified. Also, after it died, possibly during transport, its beak broke. The mummy weighed 942 grams and is estimated by researchers to be 1,500 to 2,000 years old. If scientists can one day extract DNA from the sacred ibis's soft tissues, they may determine its origin. The glass desert of Libya. In the very center of the Sahara, there is a place where the dunes suddenly turn into a scattering of yellow golden shards, as if a giant city made of bottles has melted here. The first Europeans who traveled along the route of the Berlin African expedition of 1932 thought that these were simply ancient Bedouin campfires. But when geologist Patrick Clayton picked one up, there was no soot. Pure as glass, almost 99% silica, transparent like Bohemian crystal. Later, Egyptologists found the same mineral in Tutankhamun's chest. His burial scarab is carved from this mysterious glass. The intrigue developed quickly. Some mentioned a sand-based thermonuclear blast from a distant civilization. Others suggested a comet impact that liquefied the dunes. The rumors grew because the uniform chemical makeup was too pure for a normal volcanic eruption. Modern analysis revealed a prosaic yet no less impressive story. About 29 million years ago, a meteor the size of a city block exploded over the desert. The air reached 2,000 degrees, causing pressure to drop so fast that sand foamed and burned like sugar under a blowtorch, then quickly cooled into a huge glass avalanche. Zircon and baddelite crystals in the fragments are typical of the extreme heat from an impact explosion. Everything matches except one thing. A crater from the meteorite or explosion still hasn't been found. Scientists are still debating whether it was an airburst of a meteor or if the crater simply disappeared under the sands. Every shard flashing in the sun among the dunes reminds us. The sky can burn so intensely it leaves a desert of natural glass. A tourist in the United States of America discovered an ancient jug. It is believed that the jug is 5,000 years old. An American tourist accidentally discovered an ancient, well-preserved clay vessel from the early Bronze Age in Qumran, which is located in the Judean desert near the Dead Sea. Roby Braun came across the ancient find in February when he and his friend decided to climb 328 feet to explore a cave known as Cave 53. The ancient jug is believed to be about 5,000 years old, and it could potentially be the first intact jug discovered in the area from this remote period of time. Braun is familiar with archaeological finds in Israel. In 2017, he took part in excavations in the same area, which led to the discovery of an ancient clean scroll, as well as ancient olive seeds and dates. Qumran, located in the Judean desert, is an area full of caves and became world famous when a Bedouin accidentally discovered the priceless Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947. Because of its remote location in dry air, the Judean desert contains a high concentration of well-preserved ancient artifacts. For many years, the region of the Judean desert has attracted a large number of professional archaeologists and archaeology enthusiasts, such as Braun. Archaeologists and historians think hundreds of Jews once lived in Qumran, based on the many buildings and ritual baths found there. The Ashoka pillar in Delhi, India, is a 7-meter iron pillar that has stood in the Qutb Minar courtyard for 1,500 years. The metal is dark, but almost without rust, just a thin brown film like varnish. It is said if you wrap your arms around the pillar, Your wish will come true. Some claim the column was forged using a recipe from heavenly blacksmiths. What's unusual about the column is that ordinary iron in the Indian climate gets covered with a reddish coating in just a couple of seasons. But here everything remains intact. The material has been repeatedly studied, revealing the shaft is welded from hundreds of high phosphorus, low sulfur wrought iron strips. When rain lightly corrodes the surface, phosphorus reacts to form a dense passive film that blocks oxygen more effectively than paint. The column was rotated so the phosphorus-rich side faced the midday sun, allowing heat to speed up the protective film's formation. The pillar's durability isn't a miracle, but the result of fortunate ore and skilled craftsmen who positioned it precisely. Still, the pillar seems out of place among the complex's rusty grates and stairs. A tourist touches the cold metal, unaware of the phosphorus oxides. But scientists wonder how blacksmiths of the 5th century, without blast furnaces or laboratories, could come up with a composition that would outlast them by 10 times. The answer is known, but the sense of the magic of iron doesn't go away. The largest rock carvings in North America. In 1998, archaeologists in Alabama found a cave where they discovered several fragments of pottery, as well as pieces of charcoal suitable for radiocarbon dating. The pottery turned out to be similar to samples from the Woodland period, roughly from 1000 before Christ to 1000 AD. A group of scientists led by Jan Simic from the University of Tennessee conducted research on the ceiling of this cave. I have to say it's very low, from 60 centimeters to 1 meter 25 centimeters. The 19th cave itself in Alabama is huge. It has both vertical shafts, typical of karst caves, and chambers with low ceilings formed by water erosion. On the ceiling of such a chamber, 20 by 25 meters in size, scientists found the largest known North American rock paintings. They went unnoticed because they're hard to see and require lying on the floor to spot. Simic, however, used photogrammetry, a well-known and widely used practical method, but not in archaeology. The unique microclimate of the cave not only provided a canvas for the cave paintings, but also preserved them. Moisture condensation oxidized and preserved the clay layer. What did pre-Columbian Americans paint? People and animals. A clearly visible 3-meter-long rattlesnake image appears on the ceiling. It is thought to have been sacred to several indigenous peoples in the southeastern United States. Scientists identified the 5 largest drawings, including a rattlesnake, human figures, and complex ceiling patterns. 2 of the human figures are just over 1.8 meters, while another measures just over 90 centimeters. These people appear to be in ceremonial clothing, performing rituals. The researchers suggested some anthropomorphic figures represent spirits instead of people, and the drawings are dedicated to the spirit world. It is not possible to verify this hypothesis yet. Toys of ancient Roman children. Children in ancient Rome excelled at sports. Swimming was popular near the sea, while running, wrestling, and athletics were common throughout. And what else was there? When it came to using objects for games, the most common things were those familiar to children today. For example, Roman children played with something similar to a ball, as well as with yo-yos. Romans and their children also flew kites and walked on stilts just for fun. They also played intellectual games and board games such as tic-tac-toe, as confirmed by archaeological evidence. Game boards carved into the steps, right in central Rome. One of the board games was called tabula, which was similar to backgammon, or rather is considered the predecessor of backgammon. In Greece and Romania, this game retains its ancient Roman name. Teenagers learned to play ludus latrunculorum, a type of Roman chess and checkers. By the way, tabula is considered to be derived from these games. Chess was likely invented to help understand military strategy on the battlefield. The theme of war was in high demand in general. War games with wooden swords and shields were very popular, with kids forming armies that fought each other. Considering Roman militarism, it was quite appropriate for adults to encourage boys to develop military thinking from an early age, especially as Rome conquered more and more territories. Besides battles, Roman boys made miniature chariots, harnessed small animals like mice or chickens to them, and raced them in their cities. But dolls shouldn't be forgotten either. During excavations, hundreds of dolls were found throughout the former Roman Empire. They were carved from various materials. The cheapest dolls were made from clay or wood, while the more expensive and durable ones were made from animal bones, such as ivory. Expensive dolls were often decorated with miniature rings and headbands. Interestingly, dolls changed over the centuries as the fashion of the upper class evolved, a real celebrity cult. For example, 3rd quarter 2nd century AD dolls had hairstyles modeled after Empress Faustina, wife of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. When children reached adulthood, the toys of their youth usually disappeared. In Roman times, there was a common ritual. When girls got married, often at the age of 13 or 14, they would burn their dolls in the fire, symbolizing the end of their youth. This is also evidenced by the fact that the dolls that have survived to this day were usually found in the graves of girls who died in infancy or childhood. This applied to boys as well. The Anabar Diamond Needle. In spring 2014 at the Anabar Placer in northern Yakutia, Russia, a gold prospector saw not typical sand grains in his pan, but a tiny transparent needle as long as a pinky fingernail. Diamonds usually form with facets, but this was a flawless cylinder with no edges. The find was nicknamed the sewing needle of the dinosaur era. At the Yakutsk Institute, laser spectroscopy and an electron microscope confirmed the sample was a diamond. However, a thin titanium nitride film and cobalt specks, a protective coating for artificial crystals made by chemical vapor deposition, were found on its surface. Alloy markings led them to the source. At the end of the 1990s, the Yakut Scientific Research Institute made diamond probes, thermocouples for measuring the temperature of steel-making ladles. During testing, a probe cracked and the fragment was discarded. Spring floods slowly washed it into the ancient clay where the prospector found it. Scientists quickly determined its true origin, but the story turned into a local legend. And every spring, gold diggers hope to find a similar artifact again. A faceless woman's skeleton. In Germany, archaeologists have discovered a mysterious 9th century burial. The man was lying unharmed, but the wife's facial bones were missing, and no burial items were found next to her. The excavation was carried out near Eisleben, at the site where the royal palace of Helfta once stood. The woman was 1.55 meters tall, but her skeleton had a defect. Her face had been hollowed out. The man apparently held an important position. He may have been a high-ranking official or a military officer, as indicated by the items found with him: a knife, a belt, and part of an official staff. At the same time, no accessories were found with the woman, which was especially interesting to the researchers. Felix Berman from Saxony-Anhalt suggested that the woman might have been a Christian, while her husband still followed pagan traditions. This could explain the absence of burial items, because the Christian tradition rejected earthly adornments after death. A burial that is 2,000 years old. The remains of 5 people 2,000 years old were found in a recently discovered Iron Age settlement in Dorset. The people were buried in a crouched position with sacrificed animals. The settlement, which includes roundhouses and storage pits, was discovered by archaeology students from Bournemouth University in September last year. The ancient village was named Durapolis. The nearby large, busy farming settlement, dating to around 100 before Christ and predating the Roman invasion of Britain, is thought to have been occupied by the Durotriges tribe. For 3 weeks, a team of 65 students from Bournemouth University carried out excavations at the ancient human settlement located near Winterbourne, Kingston. During this time, they discovered the bodies of women and men, as well as animal remains in pits that were originally used for grain storage. The bodies were found in a crouched position in oval-shaped pits. They were buried together with large pieces of meat and clay bowls that originally contained drinks for the afterlife. According to experts, this was how members of the tribe left everything their deceased needed for the journey to the other world. Bent burial positions were standard during that period, starting in the Bronze Age and continuing into the Iron Age. Later, the team will continue to explore and scan the territory of East Dorset in search of other settlements, which they hope may reveal more secrets about life in pre-Roman Britain. Tutankhamun's throne is 3,300 years old. The place of honor where the ruler sat was always given special attention. In any culture, he was not just the main person over the people, he ruled on behalf of the gods. A special chair, a throne, is a symbol of chosenness and power. In 1922, Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered. Inside, they found the throne of this young Egyptian pharaoh. Tutankhamun died when he was 19 years old, around 1323 before Christ. The throne is very interesting as a ruler's regalia, as a work of art, and as a kind of family photo album. Because the tomb wasn't looted, the throne remains nearly untouched today. The thieves only took the precious stones and some gold details. The throne is wooden, covered with gold plates. Its mosaic patterns use glass, quartz, enamel, and ivory. So even considering that the precious stones have been removed, the throne is still beautiful and the patterns are as informative as possible. It is the image on the back of the throne that makes it such an exceptional artifact. The drawings are very different from how pharaohs were usually depicted. They were supposed to be shown as powerful, standing firmly on their feet. On the back of Tutankhamun's throne, he appears in a cozy domestic setting. The pharaoh sits relaxed as his wife anoints him with oils, and they appear to be having a pleasant family conversation. It's clear that this is Tutankhamun's wife because the couple has matching anklets, which are symbols of marriage. We see a boy, young and carefree. Researchers even claim that he is rocking in his chair. If you look closely, the throne's legs in the image aren't level. The back leg is higher than the front. One might think that this chair has nothing to do with the throne as a symbol of power. The armrests feature enameled winged serpents, while the backrest displays 4 cobras with solar discs, symbolizing wisdom. The legs have lion heads at the top and paws at the bottom, representing power. It's unclear whether the throne was made specifically for the tomb or if the pharaoh used it during his lifetime. The image doesn't suggest the afterlife at all. The Fuente Magna Bowl. On the slope of the Bolivian Calapullo Ridge, not far from Lake Titicaca, a farmer in the late 1950s dug up a heavy stone bowl almost half a meter in diameter. On the outside, there's a typical Andean ornament, and inside 2 zones are carved. The upper one is filled with stylized llamas and wavy lines, while the lower one is unexpectedly covered with small symbols that enthusiasts immediately took for Sumerian cuneiform. Thus, the legend of Mesopotamia meeting the Andes was born. Legend says Ur's seafarers brought the sacred vessel across the ocean 3,000 years before Columbus. At the University of La Paz, a microscope showed uneven wedges, irregular lines, and many symbols cut off, as if the craftsmen copied them without knowing where strokes ended. Geologists added more details. The stone itself is local volcanic tuff, and the chisels left marks characteristic of other 20th century tools. The inner surface is covered with a thin, honey-colored patina. This is hardened varnish made from tree resin, popular among Bolivian amateur restorers in the first half of the last century. It seems we're dealing with an amateur forgery or a tourist souvenir that was given the status of an ancient artifact too soon. But the bowl remained on the list of mysteries. The blend of Andean and Sumerian patterns is too cinematic to fade, so it remains on a separate shelf in the Tiwanaku Museum, as a reminder that sometimes a single exotic pattern is enough to connect 2 continents of myths across an ocean. Speleologists found an ancient mine. British speleologists exploring caves near Alderley Edge stumbled upon a cobalt mine that had remained untouched since it was sealed and abandoned by miners more than 200 years ago. The mine's low oxygen created an underground time capsule, preserving items left by workers. The discovery was made in the fall of 2021 by the Derbyshire Caving Club, which was exploring the Alderley Edge mine network in Cheshire. Finding a mine in its original state with personal belongings and inscriptions is rare. It's a real window into the past. On the last day when the miners stopped working here, written records and archaeological data indicate that copper, lead, and cobalt were mined at Alder Edge during the Roman Empire, the Bronze Age, and between the 1690s and the 1920s. Now the network of caves and passages belongs to the National Trust, But since the 1970s, it has been leased to the Derbyshire Caving Club. The last mine they discovered goes 10 meters underground. It was found by the club thanks to a depression in the landscape, indicating a collapsed mine entrance. Experts believe that the mine, where cobalt was once extracted, was abandoned around 1810. Speleologists from the Derbyshire Speleological Club discovered numerous personal belongings and equipment in the mine, which were discarded by the workers just before the mine was sealed. These include leather shoes, clay pipes, a metal button from a jacket, mining equipment, and inscriptions made with candle soot on the walls. A clay bowl was also found here, walled into the wall, which may have been placed there by superstitious miners as a sign of gratitude for a good source of minerals. They also discovered clearly defined fingerprints pressed into clay balls that once held candles, and the imprint of corduroy from a worker's clothing who had leaned against the wall. Jamie Lunt, an archaeologist from the National Trust, said, "This discovery helps us understand a lesser-known chapter in the history of mining at Alderley Edge, where mines have been explored and worked for 4,000 years. Crystal skulls. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, perfectly polished skulls made from solid rock crystal appeared. No mention of excavations, just mysterious sellers claiming these were Maya relics that could sing under moonlight and open doors to other worlds. Details soon surrounded the legend. They said that there are exactly 13 such skulls, that together they project a map of the stars or hold messages about vanished celestial mentors. Mediums claimed that the crystal resonates with brainwaves, deciphering ancient wisdom, and modern lithotherapy masters sold activation sessions at the price of a piece of jewelry. In the 1990s, the British Museum and Smithsonian Institution used a scanning electron microscope on the most famous skulls and found traces of a diamond-coated rotating tool on their surfaces. Such a tool would only appear after the 1860s. Moreover, the quartz structures lack internal cracks, which would inevitably appear if it had been hand-polished with sand. This means the artifact was almost certainly shaped on a modern machine, but one skull, supposedly found in Belize before the influx of mass-produced fakes, still puzzles the experts. No receipt of purchase, no archaeological record, only the stories of previous owners. They say the crystal was polished for centuries, with water, quartz dust, and Maya craftsmen's patience. Scientists are almost certain that they are looking at a later copy, but they still leave a small chance for the truth. What if ancient hands really did this? Maybe we just haven't figured out what tool was used to create it yet. Neanderthals and cannibalism. Evidence found in several places suggests that Neanderthals not only practiced cannibalism, but also made tools from bones. A few years ago, archaeologists found 40,000-year-old Neanderthal skeletons in Belgium's Goyet caves. Their bones showed cuts, pits, and notches, indicating they were killed. In addition, the bodies were also skinned and cut, and their bone marrow was extracted. All of this suggests that these people fell victim to cannibalism by other Neanderthals. Other food sources found in the same caves, such as deer and horses, were prepared in the same way. In addition, femurs and shins were used as tools for striking. In the 1990s, researchers found remains of 6 Neanderthals, including 2 children, in France's Moulaguercy cave. They had the same marks as the others, but they also had finger bones that had been chewed by Neanderthals. A vessel where no laws applied. During Prohibition in the United States, the country was in real chaos, but gangster groups used this time to their advantage. The most famous gangster in history, Al Capone, turned an ordinary barge into a real floating restaurant casino where prohibition didn't apply. Here, anyone could do whatever they wanted. Alcohol and money flowed freely. Originally, it was intended that the kuka barge would only transport timber, and for some time, the barge was used for its intended purpose. From 1889 to 1928, the barge was used to transport timber. After that, it was turned into a floating dance hall with live music, endless alcohol, and of course, gambling. Access to the barge was only for insiders, and among those insiders were Al Capone himself, his closest associates, And of course, local politicians and police precinct chiefs. In the 1930s, corruption was more widespread in the United States than alcohol. Al Capone bribed everyone, and those who didn't want to take the money ended up as fish food. It would seem that such a ship should live forever, and what could possibly happen to it when it's under the control of the most famous gangster and under police supervision? However, in 1931, a drunken visitor shot the restaurant manager, and the following year, the ship sank for unknown reasons. Recently, divers Chris Roxburgh and Lee Rosenberg photographed the Kuka barge at the bottom of the lake. After over 40 years transporting timber, the barge wore out and began leaking, requiring daily pumping. The person who did this job was paid in whiskey, which at that time was considered an expensive liquid currency. But it seems to me that the worker didn't have time to take his wages ashore and drank them while working. Some believe local residents deliberately sank the barge because they disliked the animal noises, loud music, and occasional gunshots coming from it at night. Glozal tablets. France, 1924. 17-year-old farmer Emile Frodon is plowing when he finds a stone ring with clay, tablets, bones, and beads beneath it. The tablets have short lines of hundreds of strange symbols. Some look like the Phoenician alphabet, some like runes, and others are completely different. Teachers in Glozal say the discovery doesn't match any textbook, while elders claim there was once a Templar chapel here. When archaeologists begin the excavation, the picture becomes even more confusing. In one pit, they find an 18th century iron knife, a Neolithic flint scraper, and a mysterious tablet. The debates have not subsided for almost a century. Some experts see the layer as an ordinary dump of its time, where everything was thrown together for centuries. Others suspect a deliberate forgery. Someone might have planted the items to draw attention to the village. Thermoluminescent tests in the 1970s found some tablets were fired 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, while others were fired just a few centuries ago. The original collection seems ancient, but someone added newer copies. The mystery remains twofold. We can't read a single character, and we don't know who decided to add to the hoard by mixing different eras. But thanks to this confusion, Glozal has turned into an open-air museum, where the past and forgery stand side by side, forcing everyone to decide which fragment of history to consider genuine. The Vampire Child of Luniano. A few years ago, American and Italian archaeologists excavated a cemetery in Umbria together. The site was called La Necropoli dei Bambini, or the Children's Cemetery. Obviously, the work was quite nerve-wracking, but the researchers made a disturbing discovery. A child's skeleton with a stone in its mouth, a rare example of a vampire burial. The child, about 10 years old and of unknown sex, died 1,500 years ago. The body lay on its left side with a large egg-sized limestone stuck in its jaw. Cement was smeared on two sides of the stone, which still showed tooth marks. Archaeologists believe that this ritual was performed to prevent the child from rising from the dead and spreading malaria. The local residents called the unfortunate child the Luniano vampire, the Klerksdorp spheres. In the mines near South Africa's Klerksdorp, miners occasionally dig up tiny balls made of dark stone, perfectly round, with black parallel grooves around the equator, as if they were shaped on a lathe. The host rock is about 3 billion years old, and that's why a theory quickly appeared on the internet that these are gears from prehistoric machines or souvenirs from aliens. When geologists cut open some spheres, they saw ringed layers of pyrite and hematite inside. These minerals grew around a sand grain as ancient sea sediments compressed. The grooves are not threads, but traces of crystal growth and rock compression. The soft pyrophyllite around the spheres compressed, leaving furrows. So the mystery comes down to a rare but natural process of mineralization. Everything else is just imagination at play, sparked by the perfectly round shape that nature sometimes creates just as well as a skilled grinder. The Begazin Pyramid in Kazakhstan. In 2016, on the vast expanses of the Karaganda region of Kazakhstan, archaeologists discovered something incredible: the Begazin Pyramid. This stepped structure may open a new chapter in Turkic history. This structure, belonging to the Sitho-Saka culture, is part of the Bagazi Dandibai civilization, which flourished during the Bronze Age. The pyramid, rising on the Karajartas Hill on the left bank of the Taldinur, just 90 kilometers from Karaganda, became the final resting place for the leader of the local nomads. Research has shown that its age ranges between the 12th and 14th centuries before Christ. Artifacts found inside speak of the turbulent history of the steppes, from metal exports to religious rituals, all leading us together to the emergence of statehood in these lands. The proto-urban settlement of Kent, near which sacrificial altars were found, points to deep connections with the Karasuk culture and even with ancient Mesopotamia. The mystery of the Iron Column. There is an interesting object in the complex of the Quwwat-ul-Islam Mosque in New Delhi, India. A 1,600-year-old iron column that never rusts and has never corroded over all this time. The 7-meter-tall, 41-centimeter-wide, 6-ton column is considered an ancient metalworking wonder. It is believed that it was erected during the reign of King Kumaragupta, one of the Gupta dynasty, in the period from 320 to the 540s. The fact that the column has stood in the open for 1,000 years without corroding has puzzled many scientists. They spent decades trying to solve the mysteries of the column, and only in 2003 was some clarity achieved. For a long time, many believed that the column was made of some kind of extraterrestrial iron, while another theory suggested that Indian metallurgists of that era used a special alloy when creating the column. Analysis of old iron production technology showed a phosphorus-containing protective film formed during the process. This still prevents corrosion. According to Dr. Balasubramaniam from the Institute, nowadays phosphorus is removed from iron, but ancient Indians did not do this. This kept the iron strong and created a unique protective layer. In modern iron, the phosphorus content is less than 0.05%, but the wrought iron from which the pillar is made contains 1% phosphorus. As is often the case with ancient wonders, the pillar has suffered a bit at the hands of people. It is believed that it will bring good luck to anyone who can wrap their arms all the way around it. For years, people tried to hug the pillar, which led to visible discoloration at its base. Later, the local authorities realized the danger and put up a protective fence around the pillar. A carpet from permafrost. In 1949, archaeologists opened an ancient Scythian burial mound in the Altai Mountains and found a surprise, a woven dark red carpet with images of horsemen and horses. It seemed like it had been in Grandma's chest for just a few winters, not 2,500 years. Nearby was a wooden cart, decorated harness, golden animal figurines, a felt tapestry, and a tattooed man's body with deer and griffin designs, all incredibly well preserved. Nature holds the secret. The tomb was dug just beneath the permafrost. In spring, meltwater soaked everything, then froze into ice. They piled a dense mound of stones on top, keeping the ground frozen even in summer. This natural refrigerator preserved the wood fibers without air for thousands of years. Why the nomads went to such lengths is unclear. Maybe they thought the soul should return to the incorruptible body, or just wanted to keep the chief's home in perfect condition. And the carpet still amazes people. Its knots are finer than those of Persian carpets, the colors are bright, and the technique is so delicate that one can only wonder where and how they learned to make it. Resin in the burial site. Near the River Deben in England, a 27-meter-long ship was excavated, which was used as a tomb. In fact, this discovery happened 8 decades ago at Sutton Hoo, an ancient cemetery that is considered one of the most important burial sites in the United Kingdom. According to scientists, the ship with precious metals and stones is the tomb of King Redwald, who died in either 624 or 625 AD. The most intriguing thing was the black substance found all over the boat. At first, it was thought to be a waterproofing agent, but thanks to better technology that became available in 2016, repeated tests showed an unexpected drop. The resin-like material was a rare type of bitumen found exclusively in the Middle East. But what this bitumen was doing on the ship is unclear. Perhaps it was being exported at that time. the Black Knight satellite. It is said that for 13,000 years, our planet has been observed by the mysterious Black Knight. The legend includes the strange radio echo that Nikola Tesla detected in 1899, a newspaper article from 1954 about two unknown satellites, and a photo from the Space Transportation System, 8-8 shuttle, in 1998. A coal-black triangle hangs above the Earth like an alien sentinel in polar orbit. Every puzzle piece had an earthly explanation. The echo signal was caused by the ionosphere's behavior. The 1954 satellites were a journalistic exaggeration, and the shape in National Aeronautics and Space Administration footage was actually a thermal insulation blanket lost by astronauts, recorded as debris 025570, which burned up in the atmosphere days later. Still, the myth persists. Each time an amateur telescope spots space debris, the night's shadow returns to the night sky, showing how a piece of foil can become a keeper of alien secrets. Death penalty for picking up stones. The public is urging the United Kingdom authorities to secure the release of the Briton accused of smuggling artifacts in Iraq. 66-year-old Jim Fitton is currently in custody in Iraq. He has spent 5 weeks there awaiting sentencing for trying to smuggle ancient items out of the country. According to Iraqi law, he faces the death penalty. Arab News, quoting Fitton's family, said he was a geologist in Malaysia before retiring. On an archaeological tour in Iraq, he visited Eridu and picked up stones. British Member of Parliament Vera Hophouse expressed concern in the House of Commons regarding Fitton's case. Minister for Asia and the Middle East, Amanda Milling, said concerns were raised with Iraqi authorities about the possible death sentence for the British citizen. The man's defense in turn argues that Fitton clearly had no criminal intent and was a victim of poor tour organization and circumstances. A petition started by Fitton's family for his release has gained nearly 100,000 signatures since April 2080. Mysterious objects that are 130,000 years old. Archaeological discoveries in the Racibórz area in Poland have shed light on the activities of Neanderthals more than 130,000 years ago. For 2 years, an international team of specialists, including from Wrocław and Silesian universities, as well as the Czech Academy of Sciences, conducted research planning to study the geological structure of the area. Professor Andrzej Wiśniewski noted that the discovery of stone tools was an unexpected gift. Artifacts found 10 meters underground, which were in deposits formed during the last ice age, demonstrate that this area was visited by Neanderthals who left traces of their presence here. Archaeologists emphasize the uniqueness of some tools that have double-sided asymmetrical cutting edges, resembling modern wide-bladed knives. These tools may have been used for special tasks such as butchering game, and similar items are rarely found at other ancient sites north of the Carpathians and the Alps. Lidskalnin's mechanism. Florida, the 1930s. A short immigrant from Latvia named Edward Lidskalnin single-handedly carved and moved over 1,000 blocks of coral limestone, some weighing up to 30 tons, building what tourists know as the Coral Castle. He worked nights, avoided attention, and claimed to know the pyramid builder's secret. Rumors said Ed moved the monoliths with his mind or acoustic levitation. Local schoolchildren swore they saw the blocks smoothly floating in the air. After Lidskalnin's death, researchers found a tripod made from telephone poles, a chain hoist, pulleys mounted on truck axle bearings, and a handwritten notebook with lever moment calculations at the site. The master used classic roller balance, counterweights, patience, and a precise center of gravity. Each stone was selected to be rolled, not lifted. All this explains how he built it, but it doesn't satisfy our curiosity. The 9-ton gate, mounted on a single metal rod, can still be turned with a finger. While its mechanism remains hidden in the rusted bearing, visitors wonder if the self-taught Latvian knew something modern engineers have forgotten. The largest Roman mosaic in the last 50 years. One of London's newest attractions, the glass skyscraper known as the Shard, apparently shares its space with one of the city's oldest hidden treasures, a recently discovered, almost perfectly preserved 2,000-year-old Roman mosaic. Archaeologists from the Museum of London Archaeology made the discovery earlier this month during excavations in preparation for construction work. The team thinks the well-preserved mosaic once adorned a Roman dining room floor. According to a press release from Museum of London Archaeology, the find is the largest Roman mosaic discovered in London in at least 50 years. This is a rare find for the city, as mosaics of this scale were uncommon in the cramped urban environment. The original building containing the mosaic is thought to have been a Roman mancio, an elite hotel with accommodation, a stable, and a dining room. The size of the house and the luxurious rooms suggest that it served high-ranking officers and their guests. The mosaic has two panels. The larger likely dates to the late 2nd or early 3rd century AD. The panel features large, colorful flowers, bordered by bands of interwoven threads and Solomon's knots, a common ancient Roman mosaic motif, shown as two ovals with loops. Researchers noted an exact parallel in the mosaic pattern found in the German city of Trier, suggesting that both were the work of itinerant Roman craftsmen working in London. The rings of Mohenjo-Daro. During the excavations of the ancient city in the 1920s, archaeologists found several bronze rings just 1.5 centimeters in diameter. Tiny marks, like 4 or 5 lines of text, were visible on their inner surface under a magnifying glass, as if the craftsmen of the Yin civilization knew how to write finer than a human hair. 8 decades later, the rings were examined under an electron microscope. It turned out that some of the scratches do indeed match individual characters of the Yin script, but the rest of the markings are just random dents. Over time, the bronze was coated with copper and arsenic crystals. Then corrosion formed a false inscription. The rings, likely amulet stamps, were pressed into clay or fabric for signatures, and their surfaces eventually wore into misleading patterns. The Indus nanoscript idea persisted. Every time another bronze ring is sifted from the earth, researchers pick up a microscope. Suddenly, this ring might have a real inscription engraved microscopically instead of just corrosive scratches. A rare coin depicting a murdered Roman emperor. Mat Varga, an employee of the Ripple-Ronai Museum in Kapos Var, and a volunteer discovered the coin in early 2022. They are excavating a Roman settlement in Somogy County, southwest Hungary, but the exact site remains undisclosed. The extremely rare coin, weighing 5.6 grams, depicts Emperor Volution, who ruled the Roman Empire from 251 to 253 AD. Volution's co-ruler was Trebonianus Gallus. During their reign, the Roman Empire faced a major plague epidemic and a Persian invasion that devastated the eastern provinces. 2 years after coming to power, Gallus and Volution were killed by their own soldiers during the rebellion of the Moesian governor Marcus Aemilius Aemilianus, which ended Volution's reign. Coins with his image are rare, as is the denomination. Archaeologists do not know who owned the coin, but since it was the only one found at the site, it was probably lost by some traveler. On one side of the coin, there is a portrait of a bearded emperor with a radiant crown on his head, and on the other side, there is Libertas, the Roman goddess of freedom. The coin is now in the Ripple-Ronai Museum's numismatic collection, which previously had just one Roman gold coin. Cave people watch cartoons. A new interdisciplinary study of 50 stones with ancient drawings has shown that our distant ancestors could create animation. They achieved the necessary effect with the help of fire. The stones selected for analysis were found in France, but are now kept in the collections of the British Museum. They are called plaquettes. These stones are covered with ancient images, mostly figures of people and animals, as well as strange lines. A new study has shown that these drawings were carved on the stones between 14 and 23,000 years ago. It is known that they bear traces of thermal damage. The study's authors say these traces may be from hearth fire. The stones were not directly fired, but the nature of the traces indicates that they were located close to the fire for some time. This led to the assumption that cave people deliberately placed such stones around the fire. They did this for a simple purpose. The flickering of the fire made the figures carved on the stones appear to move and distort, creating a kind of animation effect. Cave people were basically watching the earliest cartoons in history. The scientists tested their hypothesis experimentally. They used 3D modeling for this purpose. In virtual reality, the plaques were recreated in the smallest detail. The modeling helped to see the engravings as prehistoric artists might have seen them. It turned out that if the stones were placed close to the fire, the flickering of the flames could create an animation effect. The wooden wheels of Lizda. In the Slavic swamps of the Lublin marshes, archaeologists in 2002 unearthed a wheel with a diameter of 70 centimeters along with an oak axle. Radiocarbon analysis dated it to 5,105,350 years ago, making it older than Sumerian carts and any official school timeline for the wheel's invention. The construction impresses with immediate simplicity and maturity. 2 maples joined by oak pegs, charred rim edges. It appears it was fired for strength, suggesting craftsmen already knew maintenance methods. Initially, many bloggers believed the discovery rewrote history, claiming Neolithic European hunter-fishermen were more advanced than Mesopotamia. Scientists approached the discovery calmly. The dating has been confirmed, but the maple disc may have been part of a simple lift for fishing nets or a 2-wheeled cart and not a wheel for a large wagon at all. Even a modest version matters. It shows people may have invented the wheel independently at least twice. Now the artifact is on display at the Ljubljana City Museum. Tourists touch the blackened rim and involuntarily imagine over which wooden planks it once rolled its load. Could even more complex mechanisms from the Neolithic village still be hidden in the nearby swamp? Celtic village and Roman settlement. An archaeological breakthrough in Munich. On the northern outskirts of this German metropolis, scientists stumbled upon an amazing discovery: the remains of an ancient Celtic village dating back 2,500 years and traces of Roman settlers. This village, which flourished during the Latène period of Celtic civilization, was home to our ancestors up until the first millennium AD. And now, while digging under a new residential area, archaeologists have discovered houses from that era, whose outlines we see as mysterious circles on the ground. At the very center of the settlement stood an impressive building, surrounded by wooden structures resembling colonnades, possibly a gathering place for the local community. Archaeologists also found different types of dwellings and evidence that the inhabitants lived in half-timbered houses. The remarkable cemeteries from that era, with evidence from Celtic and Roman times, show us that this area was inhabited and prosperous for many centuries. Every ceramic plate, jug with an intact handle, soapstone drinking vessel, and even the rare sickle from the burials tells the story of days long past. The Ark of the Covenant. In the Ethiopian city of Aksum, behind the thick walls of the Church of St. Mary, there is an object guarded that the locals call the true Ark of the Covenant. A gold-plated acacia box, 2 carrying handles, and a lid with winged figures. Only one guardian monk may enter the sanctuary. All that the pilgrims see is a dark silhouette under a cover and stories about lightning that flashes if you touch it without a blessing. Some enthusiasts see in the description of the Ark a diagram of a primitive electrical device. A gold-covered wooden box closely resembles a capacitor, and the ornate wings on top could easily be seen as contacts. People today have tried to create similar models and successfully generated a weak voltage from static charge. Skeptics object that in terms of its size, the Ark is no different from an ordinary portable box for scrolls, and the sparks that pilgrims talk about could very well have been caused by static electricity in the dry mountain air. It's impossible to verify these theories for now since no one has opened the relic, and X-rays or wood analysis are forbidden. While debates continue, the closed door could hide an ordinary reliquary or an unknown device. Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. One of the most important archaeological sites in the world is not a lost city or a treasure-filled tomb. It's a steep ravine in the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania. In this place, known as Olduvai Gorge, the earliest evidence of human ancestors is preserved. In the 1930s, the husband and wife paleoanthropologists Louis and Mary Leakey discovered stone tools in Olduvai Gorge as well as the remains of the skull of the primate proconsul, which is 25 million years old. Then in 1959, Mary Leakey discovered parts of the skull and upper teeth belonging to Paranthropus boisei, an early human ancestor, or hominid, who lived about 1,750,000 years ago. At that time, Paranthropus boisei was the oldest hominid ever discovered. The Leakeys and their two sons also discovered another human ancestor in Olduvai Gorge, Homo habilis. In 1968, Peter Nzubi discovered a Homo habilis skull at this site dating back 1.8 million years. And in 1986, a group of archaeologists from Tanzania and the United States discovered hundreds of bones belonging to a female Homo habilis, who also lived about 1.8 million years ago. An axe over 200,000 years old. Archaeologists from Saudi Arabia unearthed a basalt axe, which is now being studied to understand its purpose. A tool over 200,000 years old was found in the Al-Ula region. The discovery was made near an ancient settlement rich in archaeological treasures. The city of Kirk, also known as Al-Mabiyat, has a rich history and landmarks from different eras. The tool discovered by the Theos Heritage Team is over half a meter long and shows signs of being used for chopping. A thorough analysis is ongoing to determine its role in the lives of ancient people. Gaston's tooth. In 1971, French amateur paleontologist Gaston Leroux was sifting through the pebbles on the Pliocene shore of the Loire and pulled from the sand a perfectly preserved human molar. The layer was dated to 3 million years ago, long before the appearance of the genus Homo, which meant he seemingly had proof of a lost humanity that lived side by side with saber-toothed tigers. Newspapers discussed a pre-human civilization, and esotericists linked the discovery to the Atlanteans. Leroux gave tours, showing enamel under a magnifying glass and remarking, "Where else would you see such early tooth decay?" When the sample reached the Sorbonne laboratory, the X-ray revealed the truth. It was a modern human tooth, but it was covered with concentric layers of calcite. Those layers embedded it into the Pliocene pebble. Based on strontium isotopes, the tooth fell out a few centuries ago, dissolved in river water, and settled in an old marine deposit, where it nearly turned to stone. The scientific verdict lessened the sensation but didn't end the myth, since if one tooth survived, perhaps real fossilized skulls of unknown people are still buried, waiting to be found. A family tomb with 20 mummies. One of the most significant discoveries of the Egyptian-Italian mission was made in 2019 when archaeologists found a tomb that had been used many times over the centuries, from the Ptolemaic era to the Roman period. Like many burial structures found in this area, it turned out to have been looted, but scientists found 35 mummies, as well as valuable artifacts: vessels, stretchers made of palm wood, figurines, and cartonnage. Archaeologists from the Egyptian-Italian mission surveyed the area west of the city of Aswan, near the mausoleum of Aga Khan III, which was built in 1956 on the site of an ancient necropolis dating from the 6th century before Christ to the 4th century AD. Scientists discovered a large tomb that was looted in ancient times. However, it still contained 20 well-preserved mummies belonging to the Greco-Roman period. Archaeologists highlighted a child's mummy placed with a cartonnage in a terracotta sarcophagus. The tomb itself consists of 4 burial chambers carved into the rock, with the entrance constructed from sandstone blocks and mud bricks. According to Professor Patrizia Piancantini from the University of Milan, who led the mission from the Italian side, members of a single family were buried in this burial structure. She noted that in addition to the mummies themselves, archaeologists managed to find valuable artifacts from that era: a sacrificial table, a copper necklace, stone slabs with inscriptions, and wooden figurines depicting the mythical bird Bay. Lloyd's Bank coprolite. Not all terrible archaeological discoveries point to our murderous past. Some artifacts can shock for completely different reasons. For example, the Lloyd's Bank coprolite is possibly the largest piece of fossilized human feces in history. It was found in 1972 during the excavations that were supposed to become a branch of Lloyd's Bank in York, England. This 7-inch long and 2-inch diameter find dates back to the 9th century AD and is believed to have been produced by a Viking who lived in the settlement then known as Jorvik. Microscopic analysis of the fossilized feces revealed traces of fig seeds and cereal bran. This showed that its creator, let's call him that, was living on coarse bread. The coprolite still contained parasite eggs, which showed that the person was infected with whipworms and human roundworms, a dangerous parasitic worm that can penetrate tissues and emerge from any human orifice, including the corners of the eyes. Coprolites may be unpleasant, but they reveal health and diet details of ordinary people from past eras. Insights you can't find in books or scrolls. Archaeologists who specialize in this kind of research are called paleoscatologists, and those who study the Lloyds Bank coprolite consider it as valuable as the crown jewels. Oklo nuclear reactor, Gabon, 1972. A French lab gets uranium ore and finds uranium-235, depleted by half as if the fuel was already used. The news spreads around the world with shocking information that an ancient nuclear power plant is hidden beneath the African jungle. Scientists hurried to the site and drilled many wells. The results were surprising but terrestrial. 2 billion years ago, a rare mix of uranium-rich rock, sandstone pores, and slow-moving groundwater occurred here. The water slowed down the neutrons and started a chain reaction until it boiled and stopped the process. After cooling, the layer refilled with water and the reactor cycled on and off for hundreds of thousands of years, leaving a distinct set of rare isotopes. No man-made nuclear power plant, no intervention from visitors from space, just a lucky geochemical furnace assembled by nature itself. But Oklo's story still captivates you. The planet can build nuclear reactors without engineers. Just uranium, water, and time are needed. A bas-relief of an eagle in the former Aztec capital. Archaeologists first discovered the bas-relief of the eagle in February 2020, exactly 3 years ago. And only now, after conducting a lot of research, have they been able to determine the meaning and deep significance of this image. The bas-relief is about 600 years old. They found it at the base of the Templo Mayor in central Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City. Now, archaeologists are sure that the eagle was carved during the reign of Moctezuma Ilhuicamina. About 70 similar sculptures were found in the Templo Mayor temple. This eagle is the largest, measuring 106 by 70 centimeters. Its impressive size and significance are shown by its location. The golden eagle is the key Aztec symbol, and its central spot in the temple highlights the bas-relief's importance. The eagle was a sacred creature in the beliefs of the Aztecs, present at the birth of the sun. That's why its wingtips are blackened and scorched. It was also the symbol of one of the elite warrior orders in Aztec culture. The Aswan unfinished obelisk. In a granite quarry near Aswan lies a gigantic obelisk blank, almost 42 meters long and weighing about 1,200 tons. The craftsmen had leveled the sides, needing only to cut the slab and move it to the Nile. But a crack appeared, so they abandoned it. The traces of tools are visible to the naked eye, long grooves as if drawn by a modern cutter, and round hollows where the rock was broken out with pounding blows. Mystery fans believe only a diamond saw or an unknown energy beam could create such a smooth cut. This means the temple builders had technology lost with Atlantis. Archaeologists say Egyptians used spherical dolerite hammers. Repeated strikes drove quartz grains in granite, creating a smooth groove. Wooden wedges were placed in the groove and soaked, expanding and splitting the slab. Gentle vibrations made even lines, much like a modern cutter. Calculations show that with a team of 100 stonemasons, the block could be freed in a few months. A crack made it unusable and the project was stopped. Today, the unfinished piece sits like a museum exhibit, preserving the pharaoh's ambitions and Bronze Age technology. Some view it as lost knowledge, others as an ancient engineering textbook, but both agree moving such a giant required precise calculation and immense patience, not a miracle. The Roman witches' treasures. An absolutely extraordinary discovery made in Pompeii. A hoard of valuable items was discovered in a recently excavated Roman noble house. However, their physical value is low. Beads, a penis-shaped figurine, 2 mirrors, a necklace, glazed ceramic, bronze, bone, amber decorations, and an amethyst female figure. However, the person who hid it carefully preserved the treasure, which was clearly very valuable to him. Historians believe this is a witch's kit, likely belonging to a servant or slave. Most likely, the woman practiced rituals intended to increase fertility, and she could also cast spells. Archaeologists are especially pleased these items belong to a poor woman, as they rarely get to study the lives of ordinary people. But most of the work, related to this hoard of course, will be for specialists in the religion of ancient Rome. They also rarely get the chance to study the unofficial, underground aspects of ancient cults. A chrysocolla amulet. The Egyptians valued colors, assigning each a specific meaning. Researchers found green represented growth, harvest, and health in Egypt. It was important enough that scarabs carved from green stone were placed next to the hearts of mummies. But no one suspected why green also played an important role when it came to Egyptian children. According to ancient records and hieroglyphs, young people even wore green makeup. A recent discovery shows that Egyptian parents believed this color could protect their offspring. A leather pouch containing a bright green chrysocolla amulet was found on a child's mummy. When the child died, 4,700 years ago, malachite was Egypt's most accessible green mineral. Chrysocolla was rare, found only in Sinai and the eastern Egyptian desert. A similar chrysocolla figurine depicting a boy supports the theory that a certain green mineral was used only by children. Several experts agree that the amulet found with the child who died of malaria was probably intended to ensure health and safety in the afterlife. Tatar screws. In 1996, local geologists surveyed an abandoned quarry near the village of Kucherova in Tatarstan and split open a sandstone boulder. Inside, they found a finger-length metal bolt with a visible thread around the shaft. The photos soon appeared in newspapers, claiming prehistoric builders' technology was trapped in Jurassic stone. The legend grew in popularity. There was talk of a hidden mine where nuts and washers were found, and one worker swore that the bolt's thread was exactly like an M8. When the sample was sent to Kazan University, they found no metallurgy there. The bolt turned out to be a limestone column soaked with iron minerals. Under the microscope, the thread became discs, identical segments of an ancient sea lily, crinoid, a fragment that became trapped in bottom silt millions of years ago and mineralized with the sand. Paleontologists worldwide know these screw-like stems. Split across, they resemble washers. Split lengthwise, they look like spirals. Science has explained almost everything, yet the stone with the bolt remains in the school museum, labeled Mystery of Nature. The tour guides smile. A single blurry photo can turn a multi-million-year-old crinoid into a piece of an unknown mechanism. Bloggers and pseudoscientific archaeologists are once again trying to rewrite history. A magical amulet in Egypt, and once again, we will travel to ancient Egypt. Archaeologists have excavated 20 ancient tombs in the city of New Damietta. In one of the burials, archaeologists found gold items, statues of the cat goddess, and magical amulets. The burials were dated to 688 before Christ. This is approximately the 26th dynasty. The shape and material of the tombs varied, ranging from mud brick to simple pits. There were artifacts made of gold foil in the tombs. The foil was twisted into the shapes of ancient Egyptian gods, such as Isis, who was one of the most important deities. There were also gold figures of the cat goddess and the god Horus with a falcon head. Ancient texts say that the Egyptian gods had flesh made of gold. Such amulets provided protection from the depicted gods and also helped the deceased find themselves in the world of the gods. Along with gold amulets and figurines, many clay pottery items were in the tombs. Miniature canopic jar models, used to hold organs during mummification, were also discovered. So far, archaeologists cannot give a definite answer as to whom the tombs belonged, but the number of valuable artifacts found here is simply astonishing. Missile launch shafts? In Songkhla province in Laos, thousands of stone jars are scattered, each as tall as a person with walls up to half a meter thick. Local legends say these are the goblets of giants who brewed rice wine in them after defeating demons. 19th century French explorers were puzzled. There is no lid, the bottom is often gravel, and some pots are carved from solid granite, sourced dozens of kilometers away. After World War II, the legend gained popularity. American pilots mistook the fields of jars for stone rockets and even dropped bombs on them. Excavations from 2016 to 2020 explained the discovery but left several questions unanswered. Around some of the jars, skeletons, glass beads, and bronze discs were found. Traces of Iron Age burial rituals, roughly from 500 before Christ to 500 AD. The bodies likely decomposed in the open air before their bones were placed in the large urns. Exactly how the inhabitants carved these multi-ton jars and moved them over mountains remains a mystery. No metal tool marks appear on the rocks, and the polish looks like it was done with giant sandpaper. Now we know their ritual role, but we don't know the hands and tools that gave these boulders the shape of a perfect pot. A teenager found a Count's family treasure. A 14-year-old Polish boy named Patrick accidentally discovered Count's family documents and valuables hidden in the ground in the forest. The items belonged to the influential Prussian Finkenstein family, who owned an estate in Gublavki. Buried in tin cans for over 70 years, several dozen personal documents and other items were found in excellent condition. The main part of the recovered items belonged to Count Hans von Finkenstein, who owned the estate until 1945. Personal documents, a diary from the time of the First World War, as well as the Count's will with the family coat of arms and a wax seal. The Count's personal belongings were also found, including a military uniform and medals, hunting gear, wardrobe items, glasses, pocket watches, jewelry, silverware, postcards, letters, and family photos in albums. The boy's parents quickly told local authorities about the find, who gave it to the Cultural Heritage Protection Service. The valuables were then sent to the Historical and Archaeological Museum in Elbląg. Information about the treasure was published in 2018, although the discovery itself took place a year earlier. It took time to inventory and conduct certain studies at the site where the finds were discovered. The Ring of Ergek. In 1984 at the Ergek mine in Kuzbass, Russia, miners cut through a layer of coal about 40 million years old and found a thin gold ring inside. A stylized bunch of grapes decorates the rim, resembling ancient artwork, while the inner surface is polished so smoothly it reflects the miners' lamps. The newspapers quickly reported on antediluvian jewelry coexisting with ancient rhinoceroses. When the discovery was brought up, more surprises followed. The metal was a gold-platinum alloy, a combination known only since the late 1800s. Geologists then gave their version of past events. At the 19th century's end, a cave-in at this mine buried a miner's ring in the fault with the clay. The seam's heat and pressure baked it into the coal like raisins in cake. One thing is still strange. Even decades later, the microscope reveals a flawless, mirror-like coating with no wear, as if the ring had rested for millions of years in a vacuum. This ring was placed under glass and left at the entrance to the mine. And now every new shift, when going down into the mine, always stops by the display case and lightly touches the glass. Maybe this ring is still a part of a story we haven't uncovered yet. In Mexico, an ancient frieze was deciphered. The frieze, discovered in Oaxaca in 2018, contains glyphs symbolizing themes related to superstitions and social hierarchy in the cultures of the Zapotecs and Mixtecs. Archaeologists from the National Institute of Anthropology and History of Mexico interpreted ancient frieze glyphs in Oaxaca, offering insight into Zapotec and Mixtec cultural norms. It is believed that the 15-meter frieze, dated between 650 and 850 AD, originally had a length of about 30 meters. It adorned the main facade of Casa del Sur, a residential house visible from the busy ceremonial plaza, indicating its political and economic importance. Archaeologists believe that the frieze was partially destroyed by the Zapotecs, who cleared this site based on the discovery of fragments of a burial urn at this location. According to Nelly Robles Garcia, the national coordinator for archaeology at the Cultural Heritage Institution, the effigies are believed to have been offerings that were possibly made with the intention of demystifying the space. Monte Alban features vast plazas and truncated pyramids inspired by the architectural style of elaborate tombs. The Mixtecs lived there during the 16th century Spanish colonization. Archaeological research continues. The sacrifice of a child in Carthage. Diodorus, a Roman historian, claimed Carthaginians were so ruthless they sacrificed their children to the gods. He claimed that in the city of Carthage there was a bronze statue of Kronos with his hands outstretched, palms up. All the children inside would roll down into a fiery pit. The historian noted that wealthy families bought poor children and raised them solely for sacrifices. For thousands of years, this practice was considered so repulsive that the Romans and Greeks dismissed it as propaganda. But then archaeologists found evidence in cemeteries called tophets. In the tophets, there were tiny cremated human bones packed into urns and buried under tombstones with inscriptions thanking the gods. Some archaeologists claim these were not child sacrifices, but beloved children who died at birth. The inscriptions on the tombstones ask the gods to hear my voice and bless me. Some urns contained the remains of animals that were definitely sacrificed and buried in the same way as the children. There were too few skeletons found to account for all the stillbirths and infant deaths that would have occurred in a city the size of Carthage 2,000 years ago. The Shigir Idol. In 1890, workers in Russia extracted peat from the Shigir bog in the Urals, and instead of peat, they raised a pine log on which zigzags, strokes, and 7 strange masks looked in different directions. The first radiocarbon test in the 1990s showed an age of 9,500 years. A 2021 mass spectrometry analysis increased this to 12,100 years. That's twice as old as Stonehenge and the pyramids. The acid-rich bog preserved it better than a sarcophagus. The wood still shows flint tool marks from Stone Age people writing on pine. People interpret the idol's pattern differently. Some believe the horizontal notches split it into 3 world layers, with 7 faces as spirit guardians. Others see the zigzags as a timeline. From bottom to top, you can see the tribe's path after the glacier melted. There's also a version that it's a star map. The pattern resembles a summer constellation over the Urals many thousands of years ago. The main question is, why was the statue broken, sunk in the swamp, and weighed down with stones? If it were just a normal totem, destroying it wouldn't be necessary. Maybe the ritual needed the idol's destruction to begin a new cycle. Scientists have only discovered the technique, heating flint cutters to burn through wood, then smoothing the scraped lines. X-rays now reveal hundreds of such marks beneath the swamp's dense crust, but the reason for them is still unknown. No settlements or similar features are nearby. It's as if the creators hid the main work of their era, and only a solitary fragment of an unknown history has reached us. 5 untouched ancient tombs in Saqqara. Egypt has recently revealed newly discovered, well-decorated ancient tombs in the pharaoh's necropolis near the capital, Cairo. The 5 tombs were discovered earlier this month and date back to the Old Kingdom, a period spanning roughly from 2700 to 2200 before Christ. Mustafa Waziri, the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, said that Egyptian archaeologists began excavations in September. According to him, the tombs were intended for high-ranking officials, including regional governors and palace overseers in ancient Egypt. All these 5 tombs are well painted and decorated. Excavations are still ongoing. Archaeologists plan to continue them. They believe they may find more tombs in this area. Ancient phonograph records. In 1938, Chinese archaeologist Chi Pute explored the Bayan Kara Ula cave and found smooth stone phonograph records. Each palm-sized disc has a central hole and a spiral groove on the front. Viewed with a magnifying glass, tiny hieroglyphs appear in the groove. The text tells the story of a small people called the Dropa, who came from a distant star 12,000 years ago and crashed in the mountains. The legend soon gained details. People mentioned 716 discs, a storage site at Beijing University, and one disc emitting a pure musical electric impulse during an experiment. But when ethnographers tried to see the artifacts, they couldn't find them in any museum in China. Photos of the discs appeared only in 1960s magazine clippings, and the hieroglyph translation was done by German reporter Reinhard Wegerer, who later admitted he relied on local guides' stories without seeing the originals. Archaeologists from Gansu and Sichuan only know of Neolithic savannas with round burial slabs featuring shallow spirals. There's neither microtext nor a cosmic chronicle, yet the story endures. Whenever a simple stone disc is found in a cave, social media wonders if it's a lost Dropa record. No genuine disc has been shown to the public yet. Imagination spins as if the stone's spiral is creating a new legend. A unique icon for $24 million. You can find an artifact not just in ancient tombs or lost cities, but also in your own kitchen. An elderly resident of the French city of Compiègne decided to find out how much her old soot-covered icon, which had been hanging above her stove, might be worth. The woman didn't know the exact name of the painting or even its approximate age. It turned out to be The Mocking of Christ, a priceless 13th century icon painted by the Florentine artist Cimabue. This was proven thanks to the method of infrared photography. As a result, the painting was sold at auction for 24 million euros. The high price is due to the work's uniqueness. Created between the Middle Ages and Renaissance, it's an outstanding proto-Renaissance piece that blends both eras and was quite experimental for its time. A smiling pot. It's not often you come across an ancient potter with a sense of humor. When archaeologists dug up a 4,000-year-old pot, it smiled at them. In 2017, after 7 years of excavations near the Syrian border in Turkey, another broken pot was found, which seemed unremarkable. But when the restoration team put the shards together into a large round pot, they noticed something very familiar to modern people: a smiley face. Around 1700 before Christ, someone pressed a pair of eyes into the wet clay and emphasized them with a smile. The white vessel with a single handle, which was used for drinking sherbet, is now considered the oldest smiley face in history. The place where it was found is called Carchemish, and it once belonged to the Hittites. A flint hand drill. In the early 60s, a farmer near Kankakee, Illinois, dug up a strange object while making a basement. A flint rod tightly encircled by a stone ring, resembling a modern bearing. The photo appeared in all newspapers' forbidden artifacts section, and the find was soon called a flint hand drill. Supposedly, Native Americans possessed high-precision drilling technology long before the advent of steel. Legend says the ring spun freely without wearing its seat. The tool's polishing marks are as fine as those made by a diamond. In reality, the artifact was never examined by any experts. After the owner's death, the item disappeared into a private collection. Illinois museums only have ordinary micro-drills, small flint tips once used to drill shells and bone. Archaeologists who saw the original photo believe the drill may have been a worn piece of a 19th century clay pipe, smoothed by time. Until the stone is examined under a microscope, the story will persist and fill online catalogs with supposed out-of-place artifacts, reminding us how easily a single unclear photo can turn into proof of prehistoric drilling tools. Daggers made from people. Up until the end of the last century, warriors from New Guinea used bone daggers in hand-to-hand combat. They were often made from the thigh bones of large, flightless birds called cassowaries, but there were also some that were rarer and highly valued. They were made from human bones. This revered weapon was crafted from the remains of high-status individuals, often the warriors' fathers, who reportedly volunteered their bones. The daggers were worn prominently on the biceps, and those made from human remains were much more elaborate and decorated. This gave them more ceremonial status than practical use. But anthropologists wanted to know which weapon was actually better. They tested 11 daggers, 6 made from cassowaries and 5 from humans, and found that those from human remains kept more of the bone's natural curve and were stronger. Nano springs from the Naroda River. In the 1990s, while panning for gold on the Naroda River, gold prospectors began to find strange fragments, tiny metal spirals, 1 to 3 millimeters long and up to 0.1 millimeters thick. Under a microscope, the coils appeared distinct, like those from a tiny bolt. Spectral analysis found nearly pure tungsten and some molybdenum. Refractory metals that don't naturally form these shapes were found in rocks from Pleistocene glacial deposits. If the layer is ancient, the spirals may have been there for thousands of years. There was also talk about nanotechnologies of a prehistoric civilization, saying these are remnants of mechanisms, probes, or tools from an era we don't know. Later, it turned out that in the upper reaches of the river, during Soviet times, there was geological exploration, and tungsten teeth were used in the drilling crowns. When they wore out, they broke, rolled down ravines, and landed in the riverbed. There, the current and sand polished them into spirals. It wasn't the fragments that were ancient, but the sedimentary layers they ended up in. Most scientists now think they're man-made shavings, but the precise shape still raises doubts. We can pretend that nothing happened, that these are just mistakes, coincidences, or tricks of nature. But if even some of these discoveries are real, it means our history is incomplete, and perhaps the most interesting part of it has yet to be written. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.